Welcome to the Cleansing Our Hearts podcast. I'm Esk. This is my companion Pop.
Hello.
And today we're talking about young people and they're leaving the church. We're going to be talking about many topics that not necessarily apply just to youth, but we're going to try to take them from a youth perspective. And maybe sometimes we'll venture out into all of humans leaving the church because there is a decline in religion right now. So we have 12 specific reasons. And Popsicle us through our first six, and I'm going to take us through our last six, and hopefully we'll have a decent conversation about them.
Yeah. So I think when we discuss why young people leave the church, we kind of need to, I think, have a little bit of a background to how serious you know, it's like how many people are leaving the church per se. Um, so if we look at the American Enterprise Institute at a survey that they did back in November 2019, we can see that close to half of young unaffiliated Americans, so half of all young Americans aged 18 to 29 that were raised in a religion are now unaffiliated with that religion. Um, and this trend is growing. Now we can take half that number, so 50% of the 18 to 19-year-olds that are unaffiliated with the religion, about half of that population were raised in a religion. So we have half of young adults that are not in a religion right now. Half of that number was raised in a religious household, but are now not affiliated, and half were not raised in a religious household. You know, and not only that, but younger Americans, so younger people in general, they're having less robust religious experiences during their childhood than previous generations have. Fewer than 1 in 3 young adults say they attended religious services with their family at least weekly when they were growing up. More than half, 52% of senior adults aged 65 or higher, say the same. About 1/3 of young adults say they never attended religious services during their formative years, which is classified from age 8 to 17. So not only are younger people not, engaged in church, they were not raised in church when they were younger, when they have more of the ability to absorb information. And because young adults didn't attend religious services as much when they were children than previous generations, as a result of that, they don't really attend any kind of religious activity growing up at all. 29% of all adults aged 18 through 29 attended religious services with their family. 32% of adults aged 18 through 29 said grace or prayed with family at meals. And 27% of adults aged 18 through 29 attended Sunday school or religious education program. So why are young adults walking away from the church? They're walking away because half of them didn't even start to come in the first place. So if you can't really come to church, if you don't really come to church at all, then why would you be a Christian? And at church, a lot of the preaching of churches is not addressing some of the most prominent questions that we have in society today. It's like some of the reasons that some of these people left the church, according to a 2016 study from the Pew Research Center, these are some of the reasons why young adults left the church. Here are the statements, and I quote: "I left the church because Christianity lacked, of any sort, scientific or specific evidence of a creator. I just realized somewhere along the line that I didn't really believe it. I'm doing a lot more learning, studying, and kind of making decisions myself rather than listening to someone else." When Christians walk away from the faith, it seems like it's because of some form of intellectual skepticism. It seems like they, ex-Christians often describe their belief or their old religious beliefs as innately blind or unreasonable. And I think before we talk about why people leave the church, we had to understand those numbers because it's a big problem. And, you know, how many times have you gone to a church that had a singles ministry? In my experience, it's been very difficult to find any church that, has any kind of like ministry for young adults that are not, that are not married or have kids. Like, I've seen ministries for, what do you call it? Like children's ministry. I see young or middle school ministry, high school ministry, college ministry, ministry for young families, divorcees, but yet there's not much for that in between period. And and that's a big reason why we're losing people, in church. So I'd say, for young people, point number 5, which is neglected pastoral care, is the biggest reason why our young people are leaving the church. And I think some of the other points, like relationship conflict, like, you pissed off at someone, so you left. Weak preaching, authoritarian leadership, poor programming. I think that all plays a factor as well, but that all kind of stems from the care you get from the pastoral staff. And, we're not saying that pastors in general are neglecting churches per se. But what I am saying is the church as a whole has been neglecting one of the largest growing segments in society today, and that is the young adult. And it's also a fact too that many people are waiting longer to get married, and they're doing so without any kind of religious background. For example, 2/3 of all Americans that identify with no religion who are married or living with someone report that their spouse or partner is also unaffiliated. Compare this with the 1970s. In the 1970s, only about 1/3 of married Americans who were religiously unaffiliated reported that their spouse was also religiously unaffiliated. In that time period, at least one of the 2 adults that were married were religious in some way, shape, or form. And it gets really significant when you look at the age groups. Of the 18 to 34 age group, 78% of all young adults between 18 and 34, that is the likelihood that they will have a spouse or partner who are also religiously unaffiliated. 78% of all of our young adults getting married today don't have any kind of religious background. Contrast that to the 1970s when, only 34% of all married couples had both spouses that were religiously unaffiliated. And this also, I think also, well, you know what, I'm not going to go down that path. And I think the the other startling statistic here, not only are younger people leaving the church in droves, but there are very few Americans who are currently religiously unaffiliated looking for a religion. 5%. 5% of unaffiliated Americans, so Americans that don't have any religion, are looking for religion. That means 95% of the population says that religion is not important. In other terms, Jesus Christ is not important. 95% of the population is saying that. Ironically, most Americans say that raising children in religion is important for providing moral guidance and instilling proper values. 2/3 of the public, so 65% of the general public in America, agree that raising children in religion is important so that they can learn good values. So most of us say that religion is important, but if we look at just young adults, 53% of them say it's not. And I think one of the reasons for that, at least in my experience with the church, is young adults, so people who are out of college and not married, or people who never went to college. There's just, in most churches, not really anywhere for them to go. And, I think that's due to just neglected pastoral care. And, the sixth point, personal sin, it's important too, as well. But I don't think people, or at least young people, are leaving the church because of personal sin. I think younger people are looking for, something to give them their life meaning. And Jesus Christ gives life meaning. But for these younger people who are not with the church, or affiliated with Christianity, their life in their eyes believes that it doesn't lack purpose, and they're not, and it doesn't really seem to them to look to the church to find purpose in life. And that's that's sad. But we as the church are the ones that need to adapt and change and try to figure out how we can fill the gap to bring young people into the church, and have them get involved in the church and have them grow in the church, because ultimately it's the younger people that are going to help keep the church going. And I think that's something that we don't really talk about very much. And I think at least from my point of view, just to close out kind of the 6 points I'm talking about, in my opinion, and feel free to offer a different perspective, but in my opinion, if the pastors are not helping to at least address your needs, then you're gonna go look elsewhere to get that fulfillment. And many times when you look elsewhere, you're not looking at the church. You're looking at some sort of worldly desire that you think will give you purpose. But as we know, Jesus Christ gives us purpose, and it's Jesus Christ that gives us ultimate contentment and fulfillment in our lives, and not just worldly things.
Thank you for listening to the Cleansing Our Hearts podcast. I've been Esk.
And this is Popsicle.
we thank you for listening, and we hope God blesses your week.